Hi, in this tutorial I'm going to show you the basics of the mixer brush. Now, I believe personally that the mixer brush in Photoshop is one of the most powerful tools you can have available when you are going to start either composites or digital painting. So if you are not familiar with this brush, or if this brush scares you, just keep working at it and keep practicing with the brush. The better you get at it, the better your results will be. Now I'm going to start by creating a 5000 by 5000 pixel document, and this is at a 300 dpi, and I'm basically just going to show you the tools and some basic overviews on how to use this brush. In our next video we're going to go into a little bit more detail on how to use the brush to create different effects and more advanced techniques. So in your brush palette, which is B on your keyboard, you can right click and choose your mixer brush, and this will open your mixer brush, and your mixer brush options are available in your options bar. Now with your options bar, if you click on your brushes, you can select your size, your hardness, and of course the actual paint brushes that are available. Every single paintbrush that you use with your mixer brush will give you a different look. So I encourage you to play with all of them and see how you like them. Photoshop also comes with preset brush designs which are similar to actual paintbrushes. So if you hover over them, they will tell you the name of them, and it'll even show you the look that will be available. If you don't have this, go over to your gear and choose your brushes that are available. So your wet medium, your wet media, your thick heavy, all of these options will have a little different look for your mixer brush. Okay, let's go on and look at the other options here. Now the next option, where there is the little grid of pixels, if you click on that, you will see that it will open your color picker, and basically this is your reservoir for holding your color. Now this area has two options for holding color. It will allow you to choose a color from your color picker or your color sampler or even your color palette, or you can sample a color with your Alt option, which almost acts like a clone stamp. Now we're going to talk about this later on and not go into detail about that right now. We're only going to show you the basic of just choosing a color. So let's go ahead and just pick a color, and we'll pick red. Now if you see, we pick the red, but it's not showing up here in the actual brush load. Now the reason why there's no color showing up here is because we have our brush cleaned off. If we want to load this, we can do our drop down and choose load brush, and that will now load that color. We can also clean off our brush just by choosing clean off that brush. Now the reason why you're seeing the pixels and not the red paint that we selected is because there's no paint loaded to the brush. So if I use my drop down arrow, you will see load brush and clean brush. If I click this load brush, there's that red from that color picker we selected, and that's the current brush load. If we hover over that, it will show you exactly what each one of them will do. So let's go ahead and click off and choose clean brush, and this just gives us a clean palette with a clean paintbrush, as if we washed it or cleaned it out with some soap and water. Okay, now these next two tools are very important. They're very crucial. It is basically how you can use this tool. So your first one is basically you're loading color onto that brush after each stroke. You're picking the color up. Every single time you're touching a color or laying down a brush stroke, it's based on the color that's over here in this selection. Your second option with the line going through it is the clean brush after each stroke, and if you hover over that, it will tell you what that does. Now if I have a red selected and I paint that, if this is selected, if I go to paint again, it will not lay down any color. So let me go ahead and show you an example of using all of these in combination. Okay, I'm going to go up to my brush, and we're going to select this round bristle brush or round point stiff, and I have it at 300 pixels. And if I start painting on my selection, you will see that absolutely nothing goes on my canvas, and this is because the paintbrush is clean. So if I load my brush and I start painting, there's that paint appearing, and it really appears and paints just like a regular brush. And this is wet at 5%, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. And this just loads that color up. So let's say I want to go over here and paint again without selecting a color from the color palette. As you can see, nothing is going on my canvas, and that's because we have the clean brush after each stroke selected. It also has the load brush after each stroke. Now, because this is selected, it went back to a clean palette. Now we have pickup color after each stroke, but we also have clean brush after each stroke is on. Let's turn that clean brush after each stroke off. Now you can see it's that lighter gray and it's not appearing, so let's go ahead and just paint some red on our canvas. Now if I come over here, I can paint red again. Now let's change our color. So I'm just going to come up here, select, and let's go to a blue color. I'm going to go into a darker blue though and select OK. And now we're going to create a blue paint on our canvas. Now we don't have this brush cleaned off anymore. Remember, this is not selected, so if we don't have a clean brush and I come over here and I start painting in my red, you will see that I still have blue paint on my paintbrush, and it starts to mix those colors together and you start to get a purple color. Now if I pick up from here and come over here and create a new color, you'll see that it goes back to that blue. That's because it's not mixing the color together. Let's come over here and pick a little bit in the red, and if I just keep painting away from that red, you will see that it works back to the blue color. And this is because of how the brushes are set up. There are so many combinations that you can do with your clean brush and your load brush, as well as your colors, or even holding the Alt key. And I really recommend, instead of me sitting here and showing you just so many different options and ways to use this, that you practice with this and play with these to see what combinations that you like yourself and what will work best for you in relation to the tools and creations you're making. So let's go ahead and talk about the wet, load, mix, and flow. Now in the options bar, if you drop down in your presets, you'll see custom and then all the options that are the presets that come with Photoshop. Now I honestly use a lot of the presets that come with Photoshop. I use the moist light mix and the wet light mix a lot, and even sometimes the wet heavy mix. But you can create your own custom setting as well based on your needs or what you're creating. So if you have wet selected, your wet is how much paint is being picked up off of the canvas. So the higher the number is, the more paint is spread out. So we have this at 10% wetness and a load at 1%, a mix at 0%. Now the load will not go to 0%. 1% as low as it will go, but that's okay because it's going to allow me to show you what I mean by the longer paint strokes. Now we have a clean palette and clean paint off after each stroke. So if I take my paintbrush within the red paint and drag out, you will see that it only dragged out about 10% of the wetness. Now let's increase this to 50% wetness. Go ahead and hit enter, and now we're going to click and drag, and as you can see, it goes a little bit farther out. So if you notice, there's also a little bit of spacing in here. That's because of your brush settings. If you don't like this, I'm going to very quickly show you a very quick method. Go to brush, go back to brush tip, and take the spacing down to 1%. That's all you need to do. So now when we go, you can see that there's no spacing, but there will be lag, and that's because Photoshop has to think about it because there's less space between the brush strokes. So just keep this in mind when you're working on this tool. Now for me, the load is a very interesting concept because it basically means how long the paint stays wet on your canvas. So in terms of the digital canvas, it will stop putting paint down on the canvas if the load is set to a low number. So let me show you this. I have a purple selected, I have a wetness at 0%, and my load is at 9%. And if I just start painting, as you can see, it starts to taper off. If I increase this number, let's go up to 84% and I start painting, I can paint for a longer period of time before the paint dries up on that paintbrush. So let's bring some wetness into this brush. And let's bring this up to about 46%. If I start painting up here and run into that red, I will keep painting until it runs out at that 84% load. Let's reduce this down to 5% and we'll paint again. And it picks up a little bit of the red and goes back to the purple before the paintbrush dries out. Now your mix is actually a mix of the color from the canvas and a color from the reservoir and how much it mixes together. So let's go ahead and add about a 50% mix in, and we'll just start adding the colors together. And as you can see, it almost blends them together much better than it did before. Let's add a blue into the mix. Let's add a lot more blue. And if I paint back into my own color, I can keep painting for a little bit longer. Now let's go in and grab a purple. And we're going to, because we have this on a mix and a load and a wetness of 46%, when I put these two together, they start blending together. Let me show you a preset, my favorite preset, which is my Moist Light Mix, and I can go ahead and paint with this and you will see how that works. It's a very interesting preset and it works for a lot of things. So let's go up and I want to clean off my brush and I'm going to keep that on the Moist Light Mix and I'm just going to start blending these two areas together. You can use this as a blender brush. Look how smooth those two colors blend together. It's almost like you're using your gradient even at times. So this is how I would use this brush as a blender brush. I would turn off and clean off my brush palette and not reload the color and just blend these two areas together. So basically you just really need to play with your presets and figure out exactly how you like to use this the best. Now I personally like to use the sample color selection and I will show you that on our next video because it is a little bit more of an advanced technique. I don't want to overwhelm you with using it here. Now let's go ahead and look at our flow real quick. Your flow is how much paint comes through the brush at one time, just like it would with our regular brush. Now your sample all layers will pick up any paint from underneath if you have multiple layers, and your pen pressure brush works just like we've talked about before with our Wacom pen tablet. It allows you to how hard or how soft you press with your hand to select that color. So if you have any questions, just let me know. I know the mixer brush is a little difficult to get familiar with, and it's really just one of those tools that I think you need to play with and keep playing with until you figure out exactly how you like to use this. So enjoy and have fun playing.